All right, let me welcome you to IPVM's webinar on 3D design tools. Today, we're going to take a look at low-cost and free 3D design tools, namely through Trimble, formerly Google Sketchup, and a 3D design module created by Axis. You know, whenever you talk about CAD of any type, typically you're talking about lots of money. I mean, tens of thousands of dollars. The way that this particular 3D design tool works, we're talking less than, I don't know, 700, 600 for a full-blown, full, unabridged copy. SketchUp has a long and kind of sordid history. Began life as its own design tool. It was acquired by Google some years ago, who kind of rebadged it and released it as a free CAD tool. You know, anyone and everyone could download SketchUp for free. And it was 3D based, right? Which patently is a big advantage over a 2D design tool, especially when we talk about surveillance designs, because so often, you know, the devil hides in that third dimension of height. So a 3D design tool is great, but you know, last year Google spun SketchUp off to a company, a GIS company named Trimble. And as a result, as of today, you can download 2 versions of SketchUp, okay? And I want to get this out of the way just so we're on the right side of the law. 2 versions. One is called SketchUp Make, and the other is SketchUp Pro. And let me show you where you actually download that for SketchUp site. The easiest way to get to SketchUp is to go to sketchup.com and click the download SketchUp button at the top. Now once you do that, you find they ask you some questions based on how you're going to use SketchUp. Are you a student? Are you a company? Is it personal? So on and so forth. Depending on how you answer, you arrive at a price or a cost of download. The personal use only version is called SketchUp Make, and it's free. You know, it kind of rings true to Google SketchUp's roots. As long as you don't make money off of it, you know, it's for your own hobbies, it's free. It is limited in that it's only a 3D design tool.
Hey, Brian.
Yes.
I just have one question. Now, should the students on the call right here, will they be able to download right from the SketchUp site like you just looked at so they can follow along, or would they have to like do some background stuff first to be able to have it ready?
You know, by all means, if you want to download it now, go ahead. I'm not sure you'll be able to follow along simply because we have so many moving pieces here. But I encourage students, if you're on the call and you want to do more with SketchUp, download it now. Understand that even if you work for an integrator or a manufacturer, and you eventually end up having to buy a fully licensed copy that starts at, you know, right at $600, you do get an evaluation period. I think it's 30 hours where you can use it free. You know, you can kind of dip your toes in the water and see if you like it. You know, you don't have to buy it right away. You know, there are differences between the Make and Pro versions aside from price. The integration with other CAD programs, you know, programs like AutoCAD, or even Solid Edge or Pro-E, or, you know, these other mainstay CAD programs are limited in the free version. I'll kind of explain what that means as we move forward. So once you get Sketch SketchUp downloaded to your desktop. There is a second piece. Go to access.com to download that. It's called Access Camera Extension for SketchUp. It's a free download. You don't even have to be logged in as an Access partner to use it. Just download it from a public-facing page. Even though it's Access badged, it can be used for any surveillance camera or most surveillance cameras that are out there. There are generic camera types that we can tweak. So you're not locked into only Access products. Obviously, you can customize this to many different manufacturers. I encourage people as they download Camera Extension to also download the PDF. Bringing the module up in SketchUp is pretty straightforward. It's like a three-step process how you incorporate the actual design tools and additions to the basic SketchUp version. It's pretty easy, but worth doing and worth taking care of in detail. Okay, so let me bring this up just for sake of discussion here. I've already downloaded the free version of SketchUp. I do not have the pro version, so everything you see today is done in the free version. There are no features that I have that you won't have. All right, and whenever you look at the main interface for SketchUp, it is a 3D world, right? 3D is 3 dimensions. These colored lines here, those are axes. You have the y-axis, which is the distance further away from you or closer to you. You have the x-axis, which moves left or right. And then you have the z-axis, which is up or down. That is height. So right away, this 3D design tool, again, addresses all 3 dimensions at once. We don't plan to go over basic, drawing tools with SketchUp. We kind of, again, assume that I guess, the basics of how to orient yourself. We're certainly not going to go over building drafting here. We'll tell you why that probably doesn't even matter for your designs, your surveillance designs. But, in this 3D space, you actually create a model of a building. It's more than just lines on paper. You actually have a structure, something with depth. Let me bring up an example of what I'm talking about. And Roberto says, can you tell again where to go on the Access website? Let me bring it up. I'll send you the URL directly, so you have that. But again, it's access.com, and I believe you can get to it through the Sport tab at the top, and then it's under Design Tools. You can download that camera extension for SketchUp right from the page. You don't have to be logged in to get to the download. So pretty easy to get to. And then Brian is clear for Brian and Luke. This is important. It says 8-hour trial period for SketchUp. So it's not 30. It's 8. Thank you for that clarity. Again, I think that's changed since I initially downloaded SketchUp. That's good to clarify. You have 8 hours to really orient yourself and make the call whether or not you feel it's worth the investment. Now, let me show you what the actual tool, the actual camera extension brings into the SketchUp toolbar, or the basic feature set. You'll see I have these 3 toolbars that have been added. I have this axis cameras that shows, every camera family within the axis lineup, even cube cameras. And then at the top here, I have these kind of pink colored generic cameras. Okay, I have a generic box and a generic dome. What that means is, even if I'm not dealing with axis cameras, even if I don't want to use axis cameras, if I want to use Viewtech or Height Vision, somebody else entirely, I can use these generic buttons to kind of create or recreate the actual cameras I want to use. I'll go into that through the course of this demo. But then the second toolbar I have are axis tools. And what that does is that really lets me tweak the cameras I place into my layout. The way they're tilted, the way they're focused. Again, I'll show you the relationship between all those tweaks and the outcome here. And then the third toolbar is axis accessories. It's things like camera mounts and brackets. Sometimes I want to put a camera in a certain spot, but if I don't have a way to hang that camera from that spot, I have a real problem. And so Axis tries to simplify that by preloading some of their accessories into this program. So let me zoom in here. Again, once upon a time, SketchUp and Google were very tightly integrated. Okay, I don't know if you've ever gone to Google Earth or Google Maps, but I have one here. It's from Dallas, which is in Texas, in the USA. Now, if you zoom in to a certain spot, you can see that buildings in this maps layer are three-dimensional. There's actually that third dimension of building height. These are objects in that maps layer. Pretty slick. Not all metros, not all cities are as well defined as Dallas is. In your area, certainly you may want to find out. But it wasn't too long ago that SketchUp was the main method of integrating these buildings into Google Maps. There's a huge number of hobbyists and semi-professionals that are out there who used to feed these models into Google Maps layers. Okay? And the reason why that's important for you is because even though you may not know CAD, you may not be a draftsman, you may have no understanding of how to draw a building in CAD, you may find yet that building exists as a SketchUp model. Somebody else may have come before you and drawn that model, especially if it's an institution or a public building, a very commonly used building. Maybe not for a small business, but certainly for an office building or public domain property, there may already be a model. And as an integrator or system designer, you may be able to take advantage of that model. So anyway, once upon a time, when Google owned SketchUp, there was a heavy integration between SketchUp and Google Maps, even down to the GPS location of buildings would kind of bleed through, would kind of be associated with that model. And that's what you see here. I've got a simple demo of 4 buildings. For the life of me, I can't remember where these 4 buildings are. I want to say in Mississippi, randomly somewhere. I'm not sure. But I downloaded these models from a utility called 3D Warehouse, which again is like the main user group for SketchUp, or at least it was. I have done nothing to draw these models. Somebody else has. So again, I'm not suggesting that at this point you can replace CAD knowledge with the work somebody else has done, but certainly this may be a benefit to you if you just want to conceptualize cameras and how they lay out. May be worth seeing if the work has already been done. So,
Hey, Brian.
Yes.
Hey, there's a quick question. Roberto's wondering, how can he import the stencils to SketchUp? And then Paul's actually asking, are the models free?
So let me scoot over to that. The answer is yes, they're free. Okay? I'm going to send this link out here. The free kind of marketplace for these models is a place called 3D Warehouse. Okay? People use SketchUp for all kinds of stuff. Okay? I mean, they build furniture, or in this case, you know, we have trailer design. You get lots of hobbyists that use SketchUp for different reasons, more than just architecture. With that said, you know, there is architectural is a very strong element of this 3D warehouse user group, this community. So let's say, you know, my new project is the Olympic Stadium and Biodome in Montreal. You know, holy cow. But whenever it comes to actually downloading the model, the SketchUp model of this, I just download that for free. Download the SketchUp 6 model. I don't know if I have SketchUp 6 loaded, but we'll see here. It's free download. You can see it's in on my desk here. Let me move it over. And I'll try to bring this up with SketchUp I have loaded. Let's see if it works. And there you have it. I mean, it was a free download, right? It's public domain. This massive building that somebody, granted, has spent a lot of time on to actually model. But again, there's a huge group of hobbyists out there. You know, they enjoy drafting with SketchUp. It's quite easy to master compared to you know, more in-depth drafting programs like AutoCAD. I mean, you really can spend just a few hours kind of acquainting yourself with the controls and become proficient. So there is no guarantee that every building is going to have a SketchUp model, but certainly this 3D warehouse, this website, you know, there are tens of thousands of models on the website. You know, I encourage you in your region just to kind of do some keyword searches and see what's there. And then this is skipping ahead, but even if you don't have a model available, a lot of times you can pay somebody, or they'll offer to draw a model for you for a fee. Okay, so you may be able to show, and again, there is no central marketplace for just this, but if you see a modeler is very active in your area. For example, if I was in Montreal, I can contact Zappy Bibisi here, who's done 160 models. And I can send an email to Zappy saying, Zappy, what will it take for you to draw this building for me? $50, $25, whatever it may be. Can you draw building X for me? And a lot of times, the marketplace for these models, I would say that aside from the very big and very complex buildings, the going rate is $10 to $15 for just a medium-sized building. And again, you pay more for the more detail you want. Big difference between exterior views and interior views. If you talk about an interior project, where you want the floor plan recreated in SketchUp, that takes a lot more work. That's site visit, that's permissions, that's, taking measurements with the tape measure, a lot more money. But if you're just talking about exterior views, $15 and, a couple of emails may be able to get this model for you at a very low cost, which is especially useful if, again, you're not a draftsman. So I don't know if that answers the question. Paul writes again, are the models free? Yes, they are. If you get them from 3D Warehouse, they're free. And the models are somewhat vetted at 3D Warehouse. They have minimum quality guidelines that they must pass to be able to be published. It's kind of a self-policing community, but if you're just out there pushing junk, the other users on that site are going to call you out pretty quick. They do a good job of policing their own ranks. There's a question. Bellevue says, any other free model websites? There may be Bellevue. But I will say by far the biggest is that 3D Warehouse. You'll find, orphan links or one-off links to the people's personal web pages from 3D Warehouse. But again, that's definitely the hub for all development, all future and current work. Really, that's where the class gathers at 3D Warehouse. So just to recap there, and I'll recap this later, you'll be surprised at the number of buildings that are currently out there. SketchUp has been in the public domain for almost a decade, and so we have a sizable number of models that are out there. If they're not, you can find somebody to make that model for you relatively cheaply and inexpensively. So here's an example building. I believe this is a post office. Maybe I can see where the name doesn't matter, but yes, indeed, it is a post office. Okay. Again, public building. It's GPS cross-located with a Google Maps layer, so I get things like lat and longitude. I can see that here in the tile. Let's say this is my next design. Okay, this customer has asked me, they have theft that is plaguing them in their back dock. They want to keep tabs of their back loading dock area. they've asked me to design a camera system that protects the area. Okay, so using the Axis camera extension makes quick work of planning camera layouts. Okay, so let's say the first order of business is they want to see people that come up this stairway. They want a good visual ID of people that are walking up these stairs. How do I do that? Well, if I have a 2D plan, 2D floor plan, I might be able to do a good job, or I might miss the detail of this overhang entirely. Okay, and that overhang is a big physical obstacle, right? Not only does it limit the light, but it also limits the mounting height and even camera placement. And so it's good that I can see this overhang in 3D space. That certainly makes the job of placing the camera easier. So because of this overhang, I know I have to mount a camera low, so I'm going to look for a Vandal Dome camera. Okay. And being that I'm an Axis dealer, let's just say I'm okay with using Axis cameras at this point. So what I can do is click on the appropriate, Axis Vandal Dome. It becomes a symbol, kind of a group, and it automatically snaps to a surface. So as far as snapping to this wall, it assumes I'm wanting to mount this camera on this wall. For example, if I move that up though, the snap location of the camera moves up as well. So you can see it's flush against the wall here, but if I move it to this overhang, it automatically snaps orientation to a different face. Pretty useful. In that way, I can just point and click, or in this case, drag and drop a camera into place. So right there looks good, but the problem is I'm still not really focused on this stairwell. Okay? The way that I can begin to visualize what that camera sees is once I've clicked it into place, I'll click on the tab that camera represents. And then what you see here is actual simulation of that field of view, what that camera sees in my 3D model. So I can adjust the focal length. In this case, the camera has a fixed focal length, okay? Which is good to know. If I wanted to see further away or up close, I could tweak that, but in this case, I have a fixed focal camera. In this way, I know if the camera is good for the job before it goes on the bill of material. In this case, the fixed focal length probably isn't bad here. It's not working against me. But a variable could be if I had to mount a camera to view license plates in the driveway. It may be a problem. In this case, right away, I can see that integration. I can see that relationship. So from here, I can tweak, the how that camera is focused. The pan orientation of the camera. In this case, I want to zero it to where it looks right at that stairwell. So let's call that good right there. Okay. And then I can adjust the tilt or the angle of that camera up and down. In this case, a down tilt of, I don't know, 27 degrees. Seems to do the job. And then I can, kind of look at the results of my handiwork here. I've kind of tweaked that camera to look right at that approach. Any questions for I get more detailed on the field of view?
Hey, Brian, we just had one question about how to import these again. I don't want to derail the portion you're in right now, so once we get done with this part, if you'll just go show that again, how to import these.
How to import the camera, the building models, or how to import the camera design tool?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah. If you don't mind, Roberto, clarify that. You mean import models or start the design tool? Oh, how to import 3D from Google Earth. Well, in that case, it's not a matter of going to Google Earth. The value in showing you Google Earth is just to show you that there are loads of models available for SketchUp. Okay, I don't believe there's a way I can just download a model from Google Earth into SketchUp. But what I can do is go to this 3D warehouse, and that is again the user group or the main forum for SketchUp. And you'll find, for example, keeping with my example of Dallas, I punch in Dallas and you find, I have, 200 different models of buildings that.
Hey, Brian.
Yes.
Is there any way to locate specific addresses, like in Dallas, for instance, if somebody
I'm
had
sure
gone
there
to
is. Yeah.
courthouse building or whatever?
There is. Again, Google is great at contextual searches. But let's look at, Courthouse, Dallas, and, I've got the Red River County Courthouse, which is kind of like the, I know based on familiarity that's kind of the stereotypical courthouse. Once I've found my building, getting them into the model is straightforward. I download, and this is a SketchUp 8 model. So I'm not sure if this will work. I may have to have a more recent version. But
hey, Brian,
yes.
Sorry to jump in here again, but we got a great comment from Ben. And he says, once you generally know where your site location is, open up SketchUp, hit the File tab, and scroll down to the geolocation add location. From there, you can search as you would in Google Maps for your site. So, for example, if you wanted to search for a site in Philadelphia, you could type in Philadelphia, PA, start panning around to find what you're looking for, and then you can also enter a specific address if you have that as well. Good comment.
Oh, cool. Yeah, in fact, I'm going to copy and paste that and make that public for everyone to see. And then, back to Roberto's comment. Again, there is no guarantee a building will be in SketchUp or 3D Warehouse. You may undoubtedly have to create it or buy it from somebody who can create it. But, again, we're talking about more than just a handful of buildings. There's, tens of thousands of users globally feeding models into this open source design tool. And I guarantee the guy that drew SketchUp, this model of the courthouse, he drew it because, he admired the architecture, not because he thought, he was ever going to have it used to design surveillance.
Hey, Brian, one more quick thing as well. How do you download the Axis camera extension into the SketchUp software? I think that was...
Let me go back to that. So there is this documentation, this PDF here. You open SketchUp up, and following, I believe it's a 3-step process. You load the camera extension under extensions in SketchUp. And I've already done it, so I'm not sure what the value is in doing it again. but under tools, maybe, let me see where this is.
I think this helps them. Like if they're downloaded the stuff already and they maybe are a step
Yeah,
behind or something,
you
lets them
bet.
help catch up.
Absolutely. Under File Preferences, I can load that extension right there.
And
So
there is a clarification on that geolocation. That geolocation thing that we mentioned before, it's only going to load a 2D map of the area, according to Brian, Matbot,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
not a 3D model. So that's a good, important point to
Yeah,
note.
you can load that tile, but there again, 3D Warehouse is linked right in the interface. Okay, so you can get to 3D Warehouse. There's even a building maker, which is too broad to cover here, but is like a wizard to help you kind of get a building from nothing to a usable space in a certain amount of steps. It's pretty easy. So, file, let me go back. The question was, how do I access camera extension? File preferences or SketchUp preferences. So if I bring this up, click on file, that's
Looks like Windows and
right here
Preferences. It looks
under
like.
window preferences, under extensions, and then I check the access tools checkbox, hit OK. I believe I have to restart SketchUp, but once I do, these three toolbars pop into place. Okay? So even though it's somewhat involved, if you can follow those instructions, you'll get there with no issue. Pretty straightforward. Okay, so going back to this model, I can see my model in space, but there's a lot going on here. For example, I have my depth of field, indicated by this I don't know, this polygon, right? But then I have this region. It's translucent blue, this turquoise area. And there's a specific boundary in place. What does that boundary mean? Well, if I click on the settings for that camera, helps explain that. Here is the actual parameters associated with that camera. Okay, so I've got my field of view pan, my field of view tilt that I set up in the field. Then I have things like the resolution of that camera, hard fixed based on the model that I chose. Okay, and the way that target resolution works, target resolution is that boundary between the light blue and the uncolored regions. So that means at this point in space, just after the stairwell, I'm at 55 pixels per foot. And then, the actual metric or units of measure is configurable. I can change that. So if I want to see things in terms of pixels per meter, I can tweak that. But you can see that my target resolution here is 55 pixels per foot. Let's say I want to adjust that. And I want 30 pixels per foot. I go ahead and apply that. And then zoom back around. And you can see that, my target resolution, that boundary has moved out into space considerably, right? I'm well beyond that stairwell now. So again, PPF is a critical element of planning the right camera for the job. We have all kinds of different guidelines under different lighting conditions for what PPF is right to do a job. If you have more questions on that, That's part of our IPVM IP camera course. We can answer all your questions as to PPF there, but for the sake of this conversation, if I know I need 90 pixels per foot to identify faces, I can adjust my camera resolution to get there. In this example, let's say I do need 90 ppf, and I need it right at this stairwell. So I'll adjust that. Let me swing back around here, and you can see I have a long way to go. I'm like, I don't know, 4 feet away from the camera to get 90 ppf. I need an additional, 6 or 7 feet. Well, that's when I can go up here to model and adjust the resolution of my model. Instead of the Axis M3113, let's go with the M3114, which is the higher resolution model. And the same 90, this is a 720p camera. Swing that around, and you can see that's pretty good. That still may not be enough, right? I may have to forego this camera entirely. I may need something with a better lens, or a boxed camera with higher resolution. And if I want the Vandal rating, I may have to resort to another method of protecting that camera altogether. A different housing entirely. But here again, I can weigh all those variables in the design space. It's not trial and error in the field. So I know that with this camera type, I just can't get there. I need a better camera. So I'm going to delete that camera. Say, I don't know, this camera here is a Q19i. We want to do that. Q17. Let's go with something more mid-range. Here. Drop this box camera on the wall. It's Q1602, which is, we may not need light finder here. But let's go ahead and, tweak that camera in the same way. We adjust the pan and tilt where we're looking at that stairway. And then we adjust our target resolution to 90 ppf and apply. And swing that sucker out and see where we're at. So there you go. Move this over. So again, when it comes to conceptual design of camera placements, I can do it inexpensively here, where swapping models out in the field used to be very expensive in a hurry. Now, that's great with cameras, with the Axis cameras. Let's say, my other camera manufacturers are my brand of choice. How do I incorporate that? Well, Axis includes the generic buttons, generic Axis fixed camera. To be honest with you, Axis here in the brand is a misnomer. It's any camera of any type. So I start out by slapping this camera on the face, and then using this generic settings tab, bring that up here. I can plug in, an actual name, again, say this is a Sony, I don't know, here's a CH something. I can plug in, my the mount location, the actual parameters of resolution, 1920 by 1080, and then the focal length of my lenses. If I have a varifocal lens, let's go 5 to 50. You know, and then in essence, whenever I go to camera view, I can see what that camera sees. And in this case, we do have a varifocal lens, and I can adjust that varifocal focus with this slider. Okay, so you know, defaulting to 3, I think I have to hit apply here for that to take effect. And then whenever I'm looking to adjust along that focal range in between 5 and 50, again, I adjust that slider to get there, to frame my target appropriately. Again, my other controls work the same way, pan and tilt, and I, in essence, can tweak this design tool to work with any range of cameras that are out there. It even works with dome cameras and special mounts. So let me swing around and show this to you real quick. And you know, navigating in the 3D space does take some orienting, okay, some getting used to. You know, if you've never looked at CAD before or a CAD program before, you're going to have to train yourself to think in 3 dimensions, okay? But, you know, let's say I want to mount a PTZ, and I want to stick it right on the fascia here, or the parapet. You know, I've got my parapet mount, and from there, I plug in my camera. I'm going to go with a Q60 series, and it snaps in the right spot on that parapet mount. Go to view, camera, and there I can kind of visualize, again, through pan and tilt, what my camera sees and what the PPF targets are for that camera. So
Brian,
again,
I got a
yes.
quick question. Does SketchUp provide a manual, you know, so you can use it to try to learn all these different things? I mean, seeing it is great. But
Yeah,
playing with it
it's
helps
all
more.
online here. There is obviously the main method that SketchUp points to is going to be in there, the help files. With that said, though, you know, if you go to 3D Warehouse or if you look at YouTube, I mean, you can literally find hundreds of how-to videos. They kind of walk you through. They don't assume you know anything about using SketchUp or CAD, and they train you. It's all self-paced, but I would say inside of 20 hours time, you can go from utter and complete novice to being somewhat articulate, semi-professional with SketchUp. It does take time, and certainly some background in drafting helps. But SketchUp began life as kind of you know, parametric based, low barrier to entry and understanding 3D design tool. So I wouldn't hesitate if I was a systems integrator or even a manufacturer. It's worth the time you put in to get familiar with SketchUp as a drawing platform. So I don't know if that helps, but certainly it's not, you know, we're not talking weeks and semesters of training to get there, to be competent. All right, so I think that answers Alex's question. So again, you know, obviously it's created by Axis for Axis cameras. Using the generic camera tools, I can apply the same treatment to any range of cameras. You know, whenever it actually comes to developing or keeping tabs on what I've designed, there is this reports button that I can run. Camera summary gives me a list of all the cameras in my design. If I hit the reports button, let me swing this over. It's kind of giving me a bill of materials and a camera list of all the cameras and brackets in my design. And even though I'm light here, I found that if you export to CSV, a comma delimited file, I do get other information there. So let me go ahead and bring this up. Export is done. Let me show you what you get in that CSV file. Now I get the name of the camera in the brackets. That's great. But I also get installation heights, and then the field of view pan and tilt and focal length settings for my cameras. And that may be helpful to go ahead and print off and hand my installers. If they can't view the client, if they can't view the actual design in software, certainly being able to hand them a piece of paper with these particulars is helpful to them. Kind of mitigates the guesswork out.
Hey, Brian.
Yes.
Is there a saved PDF, or how would you be able to print it and share it with somebody for a client?
Yeah, that's a great question. The answer is in the free version in SketchUp Make, that's very limited. In the pro version, that is something that you pay for. You can print them in a scaled version to PDF or export them as CAD files, as DXFs or DWGs. So the simple answer is in the free version, you're very limited to doing just that. But in the pro version, they build features out to help you get there. All right, so let me, show you some limitations of SketchUp, of this low-cost tool. With that in mind, let me bring this up. Kind of the key limitations. We've so far looked at exteriors, right? In this way, building exteriors are public domain, unprotected. Floor plans are a lot more secretive. Ours have to be inside the building, where I have access inside the building to accurately reflect what I see. So, in the grand scheme of things, just because you have visibility to the outside exterior of a building, this may not be the tool that you need for the inside. Certainly you can use it for that. It's just that most people, most end users, and most hobbyists are not going to spend the time or have the access needed to develop a good, accurate interior model of the building. So, if you're primarily engaged in small commercial markets or, token businesses, it's going to be kind of a weak contender for you. You're going to be doing a lot of drafting on your own just to get to the point that you can use this tool. And then whenever we say no infrastructure, what that means is it's great that I can lick and stick these cameras anywhere in my model. That doesn't mean that it's possible in real life. I still have to find things like suitable mounting surfaces for my cameras. Just because I can stick a camera on EFIS in SketchUp doesn't mean I can do that in real life. And sometimes, again, the devil is in the details. Those are details that you just don't get with this free camera extension. And then the whole back end of the camera design, things like network or power or switch, IDF, MDF, distribution, storage, You know, none of that is addressed by this tool. And this is just simply a visualization tool. It's to help you optimize what your cameras see visually on the front end. The back end stuff, the meat and potatoes of so many designs is not addressed by this platform. And then, even then, if you pay for the pro version of SketchUp, the CAD implementation or the CAD import is weak. A lot of times, you're importing DXF files, which are basic file types. And you may find that there's usability errors or translation errors, very small things that can add lots of time to using SketchUp as a primary design tool. So just be forewarned that even though it does integrate with CAD, at some points that integration is going to be clunky because you're busting down versions and importing basic versions of files to use them in SketchUp.
Hey, Brian.
Yes.
One quick clarification. Pete wanted to make sure to get the images themselves to use in your mapping things. Should you use like a Snagit tool or a PDF print driver to capture those images, or is it an actual import process?
Both. I think the more refined version is to actually use the import process in SketchUp. Again, in my version, it's file, geolocation, and then add more imagery right there. And you can rep that right from coordinates. But with that in mind, if you don't have time for that or if there's just too many unknowns, you can import screenshots and use those as basic tiles, as frames, okay? Now, you have to make sure that's done right, and scaling is a bit of a trick in SketchUp. You want to make sure that 10 feet as it appears in the world is 10 feet as it appears in SketchUp, not 9.5 or 5 feet or some other oddball measure. You want to make sure it's scaled right, and that's really where doing it through the add more imagery function in SketchUp buys you a lot of time, and that's why it is more refined.
Hey, Brian, one more clarification from Brian. He wants to know if a client already has a 3D interior, can SketchUp import that work? Is it compatible with most of the 3D CAD types that they may have?
I would not say it's compatible with most. It's compatible with some, okay? There are a lot of particulars that we have to navigate here. Let me go to SketchUp's website. I think you'll find that in general, the more complex a model is in some other CAD program, the less that complexity is going to be able to be pulled through in SketchUp, okay? But if you do a comparison of the versions, try to get there. That's slow for me. It's going to work with some 3D file formats, but not others. Again, I think if you can get that 3D information to persist as part of a DWG file, it's going to be able to be pulled through. But if you can't, if it's another file format or it's resides on a module that isn't DWG compatible, it's going to be lost. You're not going to have that information pulled through.
Hey, Brian. There's one question from Angel that's a good question. He says he's in sales and he's wondering which features come in the Pro version that might be more beneficial if he's actually presenting it to a customer.
Good question. Again, let me try to get to this. There's a matrix that they have built. It kind of summarizes the difference here. For some reason, I can't pull it up. So let me give you a recap. Whenever you go to Pro, you do have the ability to import DXFs and DWGs. So you can import CAD files. But the same way you can export DWGs and DXFs from SketchUp. So that means that in theory, you can do work in SketchUp and export that, and then the architect or engineer can reincorporate that into a floor plan. I have the ability to print scaled outputs with the Pro version. Again, even though I may be able to print screenshots, I can actually print scaled outputs from Pro. So that means I set my scale to a plotter where, 1/4 of an inch equals 1 foot, for example. And my plotter is actually able to produce a scale drawing like you'd see in blueprints. I think beyond that, you're going to find that there are some usability differences. I have things like I can share libraries on a network with Pro where I can't with Make or the personal version. But as far as gross functional differences, most are seen in integration with design platforms, with design softwares. And then Dale says, here's another, or can you quickly show how you add the camera to the mount again? Yeah, I've noticed that you can do it the easy way or the hard way. And for a long time, I was pretty battered, and I just try to do things the hard way. But let's say I want to stick a camera here. Okay, I can wrestle with it and try to choose a dome and get it to mate with that face on the mount. And I could spend, 20 minutes trying to do that. Or what I can do is simply go to the entity of the mount in the program and select the companion camera series mounts to it. So in this case, let's go with the P55, and sure enough, it mounts the sucker right where it should be. And so with that, I guess if you're trying to mount a generic dome, you're going to be in for some wrangling, because the other way to do it is I stick my camera mount there, I click the generic dome, and all of a sudden I'm off to the races trying to get that thing to mount up right. And I think the way to get that done is a lot of wrestling. So, see if I get lucky here. I doubt I will. I think I got lucky. There you go. So, there's my generic. And it's still not right. It's kind of mounted down there sideways.
Hey, Brian, can you change the resolution on that camera? What, like the good one that you've got up there?
Yeah. Yeah. So the arrow is the select cursor. And I'll just click on this Q or this P55 series. I can either select the resolution from the types axis offers. So let's bump this up to our P5544. And you can see that bumped me up to a 720p camera. Or if I have a generic camera, I can do the same thing. Now I have a generic dome. It asks me to input my horizontal and vertical resolution here. So I don't know, let's do this. There you go. And then after I do that, I have to apply my things. But they are there at that point. Now I can see what my camera sees with all that new resolution. And now at one point on the field of view, you'll see that, well, I don't know if you can see it, but I've kind of got a shaded area on the boundary. You'll notice that for SD cameras, that's really a 4:3 aspect ratio, and for HD, that's 16:9. So depending on the resolution, that shaded area on the boundaries kind of limits what I see by my real aspect ratio. I may be able to see more based on my view in SketchUp, but this shaded area on the left and right, that kind of simulates what the camera itself is going to see. So it's pretty helpful as well. All right, what other questions? Now, I will say this. While it is helpful, it's very helpful to be able to visualize camera layouts in this way. You know, the rule garbage in, garbage out applies. So if you don't have a good, accurate model to begin with, you know, your benefit may be limited. Obviously, there's a fine line between adding lots of cost and having a good, accurate base model to work with. So you're going to have to find where that line is. You know.
Hey, Brian.
Yes.
On those field of view things that are showing on the map there, is there a way to change colors or alternate colors so they're not all the same?
Not that I'm familiar with. No.
Scott McTaggart does not like green. So
Yeah, you know, bummer. I'm pretty sure that's fixed. If it is adjustable, it's in the backside. It's not through the main interface. And then another thing that we don't have with this design tool is the impact of light. Okay? So whether or not a place is brightly lit or if it's dim or, you know, if white dynamic is there. I mean, you do see shading, okay? You do see shadowing. That's very, very simplified. It may not be accurate at all as what you see in the real world. You know, I've got a shadow cast in this corner, but just how intense that contrast is depends on, you know, the actual physical location of the building. And there isn't a good, clean way to accommodate for that in this design tool. And you're still going to want to visit location in person to see what impact lighting plays to the camera design. And then Paul is saying, can't you
Brian,
use
is there a way to scan an image?
You mean scan an image and import it into SketchUp? Yes, you can. Again, the difficulty there, though, is getting it scaled. But, you know, I can scan a PDF and import that PDF into our Pro version pretty easily. And then Paul says something, can't you just use the paint bucket to change the colors? Maybe. I think that pertains more towards building materials. So you may be right, Paul. You may be right. I just don't know what layer field of view appears under. So it may be able to be done.
If some of those other folks who have given us some good answers where we look for different things do know about that, just fire it in there so we can share it for everybody.
Yeah,
If
you
not,
bet.
no big deal.
I've already hit the wall, Paul. I tried to do it and I failed. So if you have a tip or a trick, like Marty said, we'll show it off here. But again, I can't, or it can't be stressed enough that to get into this design tool, at the most, it's a $600 software purchase and, your own personal time to get oriented with it. For you to be able to get up to speed on a 3D design tool for, a few $1,000s is a remarkable advantage compared to a platform like Solid Edge or Pro-E or SolidWorks, where you're looking at a capital expense, tens of thousands of dollars right away, and then weeks of training to get there. With this, I can afford to be a system integrator or consultant full time, and just kind of fiddle my way around to being competent with this tool, and I don't spend a lot of money to get there. So we are, what time is it? Oh man, we're 15 minutes past the hour. So let me make sure I answer all the questions. And then Krista is saying the 590.
There's one more in there that just...
Yeah, Krista is saying the 590 for Pro is for an individual license, not multiple seats, correct? That is correct. If you want a network located, utility, I think it's bought in increments of 4 users, and there's about a $50 break on the price there. Again, it's a minimum of 4, but I think for about $2,200, you can buy a network instance of SketchUp. And then Paul is saying, yeah, the paint bucket doesn't work. And just tested it. Must not see it as an object. I think you're right, Paul. And I agree. I mean, that would be a good feature because otherwise, when you just have a mass of blue fields of view or green fields of view, pulling out discrete cameras becomes an issue. So it would be nice, every camera gets a different color or something similar. All right, what other questions do we have?
One thing I did notice when I was looking around when you were talking earlier, there is an actual forum for SketchUp, right? So if, I'm sure that if you have any specific questions like that you just can't find after the webinar and you're playing around, I would suggest going on that webinar. Going on that forum.
Yeah,
I'll go grab the link right now for that, and I'll throw it in so everybody can see it.
Okay, great. And I'll bring it up here too. I mean, and again, you get a lot of self-trained, self-taught users to respond. That may not always be ideal. They may try to address something you're doing wrong stylistically before they actually answer your question. And that can be irritating, but there again, you have a resource with thousands of users. And so even basic questions do get.
Yeah, the URL is very simple. It's just forums.sketchup.com.
Okay. And I
And there's
think,
tons of stuff in there, as Brian just
yeah,
mentioned.
you can narrow that down. If I just have questions on 3D Warehouse, I can narrow the topics based on that. Or if I have questions just on SketchUp, not, the back end stuff, APIs, whatever it is. And even then, I can drill down, like for feature request, it may be good to say, that may actually be a more access-centric thing, but we can say, I want to be able to paint fields of view different colors. So,
A couple
right.
of other good questions now. Pete's asking, how do we ensure that the 3D building rendering is properly scaled? Any ideas?
The easy answer is to go out and to actually measure a feature in space. Okay? I mean, confirm the measurements on site. And I'm not saying that you have to confirm every measurement, but the length of one wall or the position of one window, do spot checks. Make sure that what you see in reality matches up to what you see in 3D space. And that's true of any drafting platform. That's not just SketchUp. That's, any drafting, any CAD program.
Good question from Pete again. He wanted to know if on those forums on SketchUp, if there's a subgroup that deals specifically with video surveillance.
The answer
I
is
don't know.
no, Pete, because again, we're looking at a niche of a niche. So I don't think you'll find a broad base of users interested in just asking video surveillance questions, especially since the module that makes all this possible is really from Axis. So, Axis may have a user group dedicated to camera extension, but I don't think you'll find that on the SketchUp forums. Which doesn't mean that you can't start one, Pete. I nominate you. If you want to be the
I was
the
just going to
coach
say
here.
that. He can be the
Yeah.
man now. It's SketchUp.
I'll sign up, Pete.
That's a great point Paul just made. He said basically at the end of the day, it isn't just something cool, or isn't it just something cool to help win projects? Absolutely. The more you understand what you're displaying or talking to the customer about, the more confidence you have, the more, the more the customer is going to rely on your abilities. If you run in there and just start spouting off stuff without this sort of documentation, them taking you seriously is a hit or miss, based on your personality. So with this sort of tool, and to be able to show customers exactly what they're getting, and and they can visually see it. To me, it may be just a cool tool, but it is going to help you win projects, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think giving a gimmick, Paul. I mean, if you're new to designing surveillance, you may not understand how all these attributes relate. Field of view, focal length, resolution, camera positioning, and target resolution. You may be aware of these concepts, but without actually seeing how they relate in space, those may still be sketchy, topics. So, yeah, I mean, there's bells and whistles here. It could be a gimmick, but it could also be a genuine aid to especially a novice designer who, kind of struggles to put all the attributes together in one spot. You see that here. And that's where there's actual educational value. All right. We're almost 20 minutes past. So if you have a question, let's get this thing wrapped up. Belvy asks if you're able to render a quality drawing with precise camera locations it would be a huge selling point to potential customers. Very true. And that dovetails with what Marty was saying. I mean, it shows the customer you're not some hack. You've actually put design effort into optimizing cameras. It's not just a sporadic or roughshod thing. The fine line, I think, is going to be spending lots of money to get there and then having it actually pay off for you. I think it's very possible to rack up man hours to get to the point the customer wants to buy your system. And you may not always get the payoff for it. If it's a matter of differentiating you from your competition, maybe it's worth it. But at some point, it's a risk. Do I really want to spend $2,000 to develop this when there's a very low probability I get the business? So, for each opportunity, each end user, that'll be a different point. But I agree with you. I mean, there'd be nothing more impressive to me as an end user to see somebody recommending cameras to me and then justifying why they recommended those cameras based on a real design, a real 3D model of my space.
Hey, Brian, there was another question about how do you do 3D in Google Maps, but then I just saw Paul had entered a message saying that he used Google Maps all the time for his outdoor design, and he wishes they would incorporate some of the 3D stuff into the basic Google Maps. So it looks like you can't get 3D stuff from Google. Is that right?
Yeah, at one point in time, Google and SketchUp were synonymous, okay? They were very closely integrated. Google has spun off SketchUp, and that's no longer the case. So as far as the 3D modeling is concerned, it used to be tighter than what it is now. Now, I think what Paul is mentioning, he's able to take just a 2D image, a satellite image of a building footprint, and import that in to a drawing program, and then do design based on that snapshot, that floor plan, and that's great. The only limitation is it's still 2 dimensions. Whenever it comes to things like judging building heights or seeing things in a full 3-dimensional space, I'm somewhat limited there. But certainly, the process of ripping a
Hey, Brian.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Oh, sorry, no, I was letting you go ahead and complete that. There's a couple of folks that have asked this question, so I wanted to cover it in just one fell swoop. You are recording this webinar. Are we going to be able to display the link to this after the fact so the people that maybe had to run away or something during the middle of it can finish up?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, like Paul was talking about, I can have somewhat of an isometric view here. But if I just go to my 2D only space, I can do things like rip a building floor plan from a satellite image and do things like judge camera coverages or cable lengths, from just that 2D image. So, still very useful. And then there's a question about, other design programs like JVSG or CCTV CAD or even Visio. There are other design options out there for doing CAD or bringing surveillance design work into CAD. Now, each of those platforms is different enough. We don't want to merge them all together here. we may have other webinars that take looks at just JVSG or just Visio. And if that's something you would like, then let us know. Email Marty or email me or John, whoever. Let us know that you would like to see that. And we'd love to put something like that together for you.
One last question here from Pete. He wants to know if you can use the Building Maker feature to allow SketchUp to create a generic 3D model based on the dimensions that you need, so you don't have to actually download the specific building itself.
Yeah, the answer is yes. Yes, you can do that, Pete.
Cool.
And again, like that gets more into a SketchUp 101 type webinar, and we can do that, at some point. But yes. All I need is a cube. It doesn't have to be super fancy detailed. Yes, you can use Building Designer to get that dropped very quickly into place.
One additional point that Brian Matlock just added was the particular axis tool only works with SketchUp. They have a similar 2D camera shape coverage tool designed just for Visio.
Yep, that's correct. And we actually have an update on that, Brian, or anyone else. It's called the Axis Camera Shapes. So we have an update that kind of goes over that block set, that shape set for Visio. All right, Marty, anything else we have to go to?
No, I just want to thank the folks that are still here for hanging out. At least half of you guys, or about that amount, are still here with us. As Brian mentioned, if you guys have anything going forward, you start playing with the tool yourself, you got a couple questions, just fire me an email or fire Brian and myself an email. That's probably the best way. He has more knowledge in that system than I do. But that's my job, is to find answers for folks. So email both of us. We'll definitely be able to respond to you. Brian, you don't have a contact at SketchUp or anything, do you, that we could fire questions to?
I do. I have a handful. Yep. So
okay.
we can put you in contact with the right people.
Cool.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us. Be sure to let us know how we can help you. In the meantime, good luck and see you next time.